We're in the Maimah V'hinei Porach, Mateh Aharon, Tovshin Lamed Gimel. We're about to start Oisei. As a short recap. So we're explaining that the flow of chayas, of chesed, that comes from Hashem into our world goes through a process. It has to come through from the chesed of Hashem and Atzilus to Bria to Yetzirah to Asiyah till we have it in Gashmis. And there's every single step down until it hits Olam Haz in a Gashmisdik way. There's a din of mishpat. However, the tzaddik's able to change it a bit, change it from one level to another. If it's not enough in Bonachayim Azona, so for all three, so the tzaddik is able to channel it in a different way. How does that work? See, the tzaddik's connected to Hashem on a different level than we are in our regular world. We live out a Gashmi's Dika world, and the tzaddik has his neshama shining through, and so he is in tune with the deeper dimension of the whole existence. The shpor that Hashem gives down to us is not defined until it hits Olam Hazeh. It can come out in many different ways. For example, you're going to get breakfast. So as you go to get breakfast, what are you going to have? You're going to have go to the store and buy a sandwich or buy a piece of cake. Till you get it, the chesed of Hashem is shining down, and it can come down in either way. How's it going to hit? Well, you bought the sandwich and you're now going to eat it. You say a bracha, you wash, you say a bracha, you say hametzi, and now it's... So that's where the hashpah of chesed filters down into our world. But until you got it, it's not defined yet. You could go either way. In fact, there was even a tzaddik, the Zohar says, that when he was eating, the food was in front of him. And he said, he davened to Hashem to give him the food. Because he realized that it could be that it's being created every moment by Hashem. So until he actually ate it, it wasn't completely his. Regular people, though, it's a different format. And usually, if you have it already anchored down in the world, it's going to stay. That's the teva. So even though it's being created all the time, you bought a loaf of bread, and you put it in the bread box, and you had it on Monday. It's probably going to be around on Wednesday, and you're going to have that piece of bread. But till you eat it also, it didn't become your sustenance. So there's a level where it hits Olam Hazeh and it's anchored in. Before Olam Hazeh, it could be moved either way. Like in this silly example, like either a piece of cake or to a loaf of bread. Similarly, in a broader way, that tzaddik's able to reach in and be attached to the level before it hits Olam Hazeh. So if it's anchored into this tzaddik, this chassid, it was anchored into his life that he was supposed to have wealth. And so there wasn't enough to have children also. Once he released it, then the tzaddik was able to switch it over. So we call it miraculous. It's not really miraculous. It just depends on which frame you're living in. And you could say also that a fish think it's miraculous how animals walk on the ground. It's not miraculous, it's just a different world. Or we think it's miraculous how is it to breathe in the water. We couldn't do it, but fish can. As lahavdul, you have that tzaddik lives in a different dimension, and so it's not a big deal for him to be able to switch it, as long as there's that level where it's not attached yet into the world. And so we're building up this picture that there's a big spiritual scaffolding between our world and every world above us until you come to Hashem. And Hashem put it in place. It works both ways. It's not just you have Hashem, which is infinite, and you've got our world and there's no connection. There's a flow of energy that becomes more physical, more concrete in our world, from the spiritual to the physical, and it goes through this chain of worlds. We look at spirituality as something which is floaty. It's not real. It's not real in our world, but it's a very strong existence in a non-tangible world. So, for example, we have taste. You taste something which is sweet, a sweet apple or sugar or a piece of chocolate. We feel that taste is something sweet. Now, is there anything else which is sweet like that? Well, what about if there's a sweetness in listening to beautiful music? We call it beautiful music, sweet music, exquisite concert, a concert, a niggun. That can be extremely impactful on a person's life. What do you call that? It's not something real. It's not as real as you taste it with the five senses, with the sense of taste, but it's very real to the person. You can have an enjoyment, an exquisiteness, a sweetness in doing kindness to somebody, or you have a new idea. You understood something. Wow, that's you get all wrapped up, and that can even be more sweet, so to speak, than that of a piece of chocolate. So we have in our world also, there's these layers of enjoyment, of sweetness. One more tangible, one more, we call it edel, refined, more spiritual, but they're very real. And so Shem has set up this system, this spiritual scaffolding from higher to lower, which works both ways. From the abstract spiritual kindness of Hashem flowing into our world, from Atzilus to Bria to Yetzirah to Asiya, there's a flow from above to below. And then we can also go backwards in the way of that we're able to change our feelings. You can have a love for physical pleasures, our worldly physical pleasures, but then you can have a more refined love, have a love for Hashem, and deeper, until it can become the whole person's life. At Tzaddik has worked through that no longer does the Nefesh Abamis have the enjoyment of the physical. He can love spiritual things, love godliness, love Hashem. How can you get from that to another? Because there's a deeper level that you can lock into. That's the what I call the spiritual scaffolding from above to below. You can climb, so a person can actually change. But only Yidden can do that. You wouldn't say that hippopotamus is going to enjoy a Beethoven concert, symphony. He's locked into where he's at. He couldn't appreciate the beauty of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's a behemoth. He's locked into his world. A Yid is able to change. A Yid's able to live in a different world, leave the pleasures, enjoy something higher. You have it in the music level, for example. There was a tzaddik, I think it was a Moshe Rebbe. He had to have an operation, but his body wasn't strong enough to take the anesthetic. So he says, listen, I'm going to sing a niggun, and when you see me deeply involved in dveikus and niggun, begin doing the operation on the body. And that's what happened. They did the operation when he was deep in the niggun. He didn't feel the pain because he was transported to a different world. That's an unusual situation. That tzaddik can be like that. But every person can have those things where you can be involved in something that other things melt into the background, because this is so much more important. Every level of maturity is a bit like that. Children need toys and sweets. Adults need things of more permanent, lasting items that there are in Ilam Hazard. And then you can have someone who's involved in more spiritual things. It's important to learn. It's important to daven. And that becomes a geschmack. That becomes enjoyable. How can you do that? Because there's a change. How can you change? You change. A hippopotamus can't change. How can you change? Because there's a spiritual level that's deeper. There's a higher level of the spiritual scaffolding that Hashem put in. You can go from below to above, which is what davening is, as it's described as a ladder going from below to above. So here we're talking in this mimer coming from above to below, that there's a flow of godly energy coming from spiritual worlds until it's concretized in our world. So every level, it's how it's going to come down. That's called the din of mishpat. Will it stay only on the spiritual level or come down onto the physical? This is what he's saying. This Ois Hey is going to explain to us how does it work with a person. We've got a similar dynamic, and we're that way because that's how it is Lamaila. It's not that it just happens to be by a person who works this way we can understand it. Hashem created the system within a yid, within a human being. We work this way because it reflects how things are above. It's a unified system that one flows out of the other. Like the Torah says, a person is made, Adam is made bitzelmeinu kid masenu, in the image of above. And so therefore, from how it works, the spiritual inyanim and the psychological things, how it works by a person, is because that's a similar matching idea above, to bridge from our world to within Hashem, so that we have what I call this scaffolding of spiritual levels, which are very alive and dynamic. The Gemara says each blade of grass has an angel that makes it grow. And there's level after level after level. The lower level is a remnant of the higher level. And so the deeper you go, the greater the energy, the greater exquisiteness, the greater the feeling of being close to Hashem. So this is the, let's say, the one aspect of where we're going with this, with the mimer, to bring out the connectivity that there is between us and spirituality, between us and Hashem, that Hashem put in. It's not just Hashem's out there somewhere and happens to drop in things into Ilam Hazeh. We're constantly connected. Our tefillos make a difference. How our attitude makes a difference. How we live our lives makes a difference of the flow of bringing all that which Hashem has designated for us into our world. So we'll continue Mitzvah Hashem next year in Ois Hay.